Right, hello, here we go again, back on the 306 Sedan, and today we actually start making some progress, so roll the intro. Right, so we talk of progress, what do we actually mean? Well, she's actually down the unit for starters, which can also only mean one thing, and that is that the engine is now about to start getting pulled. So let's just have a quick recap and a little reminder as to why we're about to pull the engine on the Sedan. So, plain and simply, it boils down to one thing, and that's the quest for more power. Now, she's already got a 10mm pump, she's already got a GT 2052S hidden down the back, and she is indeed forged. But the limiting factor of this whole build has always been trying to push the limits of this stock top-mount intercooler. And well, at 18 PSI, I managed to find it. So 18 PSI on the stock top mount intercooler, I was starting to see the limits of what I could really push with it in terms of heat soak and stuff like that. The additional heat in the bay started having an adverse effect and I just couldn't push no more power. Now, 18 PSI doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider we are on a bigger turbo, it was pushing roughly about 140 brake horsepower, which I would deem not too bad. But of course, these things have got to be addressed, and well, there's only one way to sort out that stock top mount intercooler, and that is to ditch it for a front mount setup. So if you've been keeping up to date with the videos what I've been posting on the page, then you will recognise all this pipework, which is indeed the front mount pipework, which was mocked up in the estate, ready to go straight into the Sedan. Also, I've got the other GT 2052S here, where we had to weld and adapt the outfeed of the cold side in order to gain the clearances I needed to be able to run the bigger boost pipes. Of course, it doesn't just stop here, because if I'm able to cool the charged air more efficiently, then I may as well be turning it up just that little bit more on the turbo. So I've actually got a stiffer spring in this actuator, which is going to be going straight onto the Sedan. And then we've got that knock-on effect of, if we've got more boost, we need more fuel. So I've got an 11mm head, got some other goodies here. So I've got these machined out LDA top caps, which will allow better travel on the LDA pin. I've also got this pressure gauge, so I can fine tune the internal pressure of the pump, and I've got some stiffer LDA springs to experiment with as well. So as you can guess, yes, for the Sedan, there's going to be yet another pump build, an 11mm pump instead of a 10mm pump. So we actually free up the pump off her to go straight onto the van. Of course, you know me, we're going to have something daft on the van as well. So, but for now, the 11mm pump which will go in it, we'll obviously have all those goodies. There is a couple more bits missing. I've got an uprated vane pump on the way and a couple of other bits like that just to help it scavenge the fuel up from the tank, and hopefully we won't have no fuel surging issues that way or any air coming up through the system. And of course, if the front mount intercooler isn't enough to keep this engine cold enough, I've got other avenues what I'm looking at exploring. We've already got a Nissan's radiator in there and it's held up really well so far. But I've picked up one of these cheap Chinese GTI 6 radiators. Nothing too special about them. Managed to get this £130 on an eBay deal with certain vouchers and stuff like that. But I felt for £130 it might be worth exploring this as an avenue. Now this, compared to the standard radiator, what we've actually got in here, we're missing a couple of things. That being an M20 threaded insert, so we can put like the fan switch and stuff in, and the other thing being is a couple of return lines on the bottom of the radiator, as you can see down there. So these are just a couple of things that would have to be added, but nothing too taxing, nothing too major to weld in. So my best worst case scenario there with that radiator is that if I don't need it for the Sedan, I will keep it back for the estate instead. I've got a couple of other things I can look at as well, such as water injection and stuff like that, but we're really talking further down the line if I have problems with the temperatures on that engine once I've tuned it up a bit more. So enough talking about this, let's start getting the engine pulled. So it's all well and good saying, let's start getting the engine pulled, but ended up having a mild medical emergency. So we're on day number 2 now, and as you can see, I've pretty much got most of the front end off now. So I think most of this shot pretty much speaks for itself. As you can see, front end fully off, got the radiator off, got the rad fluid drained the engine oil, drained the gearbox oil. The only thing I've got left to drain is the power steering fluid, which I've actually forgotten to buy more of. But apart from that, got most of the induction off, most of the cabling off. I've got to take the 2 bulkhead pipes off for the heater matrix, a couple of fuel lines, drive shafts are already out. Literally already pulled them, split the ball joints and everything like that. So I've also got this one just to put back on. When I say put back on, I mean put the ball joint back on. So yeah, I'm almost there. I'll probably do a time lapse of me actually pulling the engine, but first things first, I need to get the whole car back on the floor at a reasonable height so I can put the engine crane underneath the slam panel, and I'll get more height on the engine crane then to pick her up and pull her out. But yeah, these can be a bit of a bastard to pull out with the gearbox. I know a lot of people like to drop the subframe and pull the shell up over the top. I personally don't like that method. I would rather drop the car back on the floor, and then basically you have to pull this end up and forward and unhook the gearbox from under the chassis leg. Sounds bad, but it's actually not too bad. But the only thing you have to do to be able to do that is when you take the gearbox mount off, you have to take this stud out, and that's mainly because this stud will just directly hit the chassis leg and muller the shit out of it. If you've got that stud out, everything else, it just comes out with a little bit of persuasion. So yeah, we'll see how we now get on. So pretty much just finalising this to pull the engine out, but when this zooms in, if we can get it to zoom in, let's hop into a few times. Just popping the fuel line off and discovered that. So it goes to show, these cars getting older are starting to have things like the fuel pipes deteriorate. So just a word to the wise for people at home, just check your fuel lines over. I've always had a little bit of air dragging in on this, so it could be something as simple as that little tiny bit of perished pipe just there. But anyway, let's crack on again. Well, that indeed is one engine out the hole and one engine on the crane. So there's a couple of little bits and pieces I need to look over on this. So it used to have a random oil leak which I could never trace down the back of the bay somewhere. You can sort of see it all traipse down the back of the block. So now's going to be the time to try and fault find this and find out where that leak actually came from. The other one was I had a water leak. Oh, clips the side of the fall. I had a water leak which I always suspected was one of these old radiator pipes along the back of the bay. So the easiest way is to get rid of these and to actually update them for the ones which would come later on in the phase 2s and 3s. So that's another job to add to the list. So a quick look over the engine, and I've managed to establish where the leak seems to have been from. So it's not going to focus now because it's not liking the additional light. As you can see, it was most likely that coolant hose just there. But I don't like these plastic blocks anyway, so sorry, I'm talking really lispy at the moment. But I don't like those plastic blocks on the back of the engine. So I have actually got a metal one off an earlier XUD7. So I'll be swapping that out while the engine's out. And then I've discovered where my other oil leak is from. And that would be just there, off the bottom of the vacuum pump. So I've already replaced this O-ring once before, and it looks like it's leaking again. But that has ended up leaving a hell of a lot of oil down the back of the block. Now, I didn't imagine it was under any pressure, but as you can see, the oil has just sort of tracked down the head, tracked down the bottom of the block, and it's just been pissing everywhere. So my MOT tester did pick this up and he wasn't too happy with it. Now I can actually do something about it. My greatest fear was that it was actually the crank seal behind the flywheel, but by the looks of that, it's just a vacuum pump. So got to start whipping this inlet manifold and everything off, and then hopefully we can get some shinier bits put on. So all that garb now off. One of the first jobs I've got to do is actually clearancing the OEM cam cover plastic. So yeah, I want to try and retain these just to stop any shit getting caught in the belt. But as you can see, so we'll ignore the fact she's touching at the moment, but that is literally designed to run that close, which means we've got to just scalp a little bit of plastic out of there just to make it all run nicely. Right, I've had to bang the torch on the phone for this one, but yeah, that is that cam cover now pretty much profiled to actually get that pipe in and around it. So I have ended up losing one of the mounts down the back here, but there was no chance of keeping that in the end. So yeah, I think it's rigid enough. That one bolt in the side there, it should be more than enough for it. But if we just quickly spin this off, try and do it one-handed. Something like that maybe. There we go. You can now see the very odd shape I've had to take out of the plastic, but at the end of the day, I would rather keep these cam belt covers. They're there for a reason. They protect the cam belt. So all I've got to do is just make sure there's no loose plastic around the edge, and then yeah, that'll be good to go. Well, this is day number 2 now on the engine pull. So I ended up getting a little bit giddy last night and couldn't help myself, but ended up knocking everything up on the engine. So it's all got to come back off because I've got to get to the turbo and bits like that. But yeah, let's just quickly flip the camera and I'll show you what we're working with. So this is just a brief glimpse of what the engine is going to end up looking like. Now we've got better light, you can actually see where I profiled that cam cover and all sorts there. But yeah, so I've got to swap the cold side over yet. Got the bottom water block to do. And I've got the fuel pump which still needs to come off and be rebuilt into an 11mm. But yeah, all in all, that just completely refreshes the look of this engine. So I'm quite excited for that. Not only that, but pulled a few strings with a mate, and it turns out that the Sedan will be going away for a couple of bits of paintwork, which is needed for a long time, to be honest. The quarter on her is literally got an inch of filler in it. You can't really see it too well on the camera, but she's rippled all along there. And then to top it off with the pressure washer, at the end of summer last year, I accidentally launched the nozzle in and started trying to fill it in, but it didn't work out. Not only that, but the roof has got a couple of bubbles coming in it, so get the roof scrubbed right back and re-sprayed, and a couple of new wings on her. So yeah, it should hopefully tidy the whole car up then. But yeah, as for today, I'm now going to be welding that thing up, so this is going to be put on hiatus for a little while. Right, so this one's going to go out as a pretty long video. I'm quite far behind now, so I ended up losing yesterday to welding a proton jump buck, or formerly known as the cum buck. which, yeah, had to put a prop shaft mount in that because Aidan, the owner, is now going 4-wheel drive on her. But yeah, with other things as well. Finally received the order of the pump part I was needing, so luckily that came the next day after shooting that little scene where I was saying I've still got parts I'm waiting for. But yeah, that did arrive in the end, so I'll show you that in a minute. But yeah, back to Sedan anyway. So the Sedan, obviously I mocked everything onto the engine. We'll have another glimpse at that in a second because we've got better light now. But in regards to the Sedan, I'm now having to strip some of the bits off for it to actually go in the paint shop with my mate. So getting the wings and everything done, I've already mentioned that earlier in the video, but because of that, I've actually got a spare set of wings sat down here, which are in much better condition. There's no dents, no nothing on them. They just have lack appeal like mad, so flat and back, get them reshot in white. Also gonna ask him to tidy a couple more bits up for the Sedan, but I've got to take the side skirts off. I've just took the aerial off to make his life a little easier when he's doing the roof, and I want to take these front wings off now rather than potentially leaning over fresh paint later on. So, I mean, looking at her in this dull light, I'm not sure if the camera will pick up, but you can see like she's 50 shades of white anyway. Sort of, there we are. It's hard to do this backwards. But the bonnet itself is a different shade of white to the wing, as you can currently now see. So I might have to be cheeky and ask him, can he spray my bonnet too, so everything matches in. But yeah, I've got the paint code because I had this driver's door resprayed the other year. I chipped the living hell out of it, basically. Can't remember what it was. No, sorry, I didn't chip the living hell out of it. I paid the wrong person to machine polish it and told him the paintwork was thin, and yet he still hit primer. That is what it is. Accidents happen. Not too bitter about it. It got resprayed. Fuck it. But yeah, so right, I've now got to pull all the side skirts off and get this prepped to be pushed over to my mates today. So he's literally a couple of units up, and we will push the car into his unit. It's got no engine. It's not driving, is it? So yeah, just a quick glimpse over the engine. Now we've actually got the better light. You can actually see the block is indeed turquoise. Usually you can see it just about in the engine bay, but with all the clutter what goes on, it sort of masks a lot of it, to be honest. But yeah, I've made the decision in the end. I'm going to end up pulling this Bosch pump off. At the end of the day, I already know the internals are clean because I've built it once for this engine. So I'm just going to whip that 10mm head off and replace it for the 11mm head. The mystery part, which I was waiting for that, should actually help it with its 11mm headness. And that is a 6-bladed vane pump. So traditionally in the Peugeot, and to be fair, most 4-cylinders and stuff like that, the vane pump actually in the back, it's located back here somewhere near the drive shaft. They're only 4-bladed, so pulling the fuel up from the tank, when you start going larger and larger hydraulic heads, they begin to struggle to pull the fuel up. So 6-bladed fuel pump, vane pump rather, in theory, 2 extra blades, 50% more fuel that should be able to drag up from the tank. We'll see if I'm correct or not. My only other fear is, with the fact that this will be capable of pulling more fuel up from the tank, I half wonder if the bulb, the priming bulb, will actually end up collapsing. But again, we're on that fuck around and find out scenario. So, but yeah, engine sat there, not going to be able to touch it for a little while. Need to crack on getting that stripped down. Right, while I'm just plonking my old ass on this fucking crawl board, just thought I'd share a little bit of insight as well. So when I fitted these side skirts the last time, I used riv nuts. Now, factory-wise, I have started undoing that one, so don't say it's loose. But factory-wise, these are usually on some little shitty plastic rivets, which are a nightmare to get out and a nightmare to replace. A lot of people end up pop riveting the side skirts on. Just drill the bloody holes out and just riv nut them. I tell you what, this makes your life so much easier when you need to remove them later on. I finally believe I've just found my air leak as well, and if we look along that fuel pipe, you can see just there, a little tiny split, but all the way down the line as well, there is evidence of where diesel has been trickling down it. So that's now got to be added to my list of jobs, and that is going to be a tank out kind of job, which I am not looking forward to, but it's got to be done. Right, so now taking the wings off, and they are fighting me every step of the way. So anyone who's tried to remove wings on an old crusty Peugeot will know exactly what I'm on about here. So first thing is this front inner member. Of course, it snapped the bolt clean off. That's not too bad because I've got the rest of the bolts out, so I can drill and re-tap that. But I'll just quickly flip the camera around. The other two bolts, which are hidden up the inner wing, one right in the top there, one down here, and then there is actually one underneath there. Of course, they've all rounded off despite being heated, and they're stuck fast. So I'm now just drilling the final rivet off up the top here, but I'm half expecting I'm going to have to cut a window in the side of the wing so I can actually get in there and either try with some mole grips, or I might have to cut the head off and then drill it out. My worst case scenario, which I'm trying to avoid here, is actually having to take the whole door off to get access to the backs in case the nuts break off. So yeah, it's gone as bad as it can be, and to be fair, I started on what I thought was going to be the easier side of the two. Yeah, I still got that side to do. Yeah, just pulling my hair out here. Well, it went as bad as it fucking could go, so I'll flip the camera around and you can have a little giggle. So yeah, one window cut, two windows cut, and yeah, I've had to chop the head off the bottom one. I can get mole grips on this one, so I'll just have to see how that goes. And then I've still got the one from underneath to deal with as well. But we're actually getting there now. It's just frustrating as hell. Well, I mean, I won that one, but I'm not quite sure at what cost. So I've now lost that wing. Luckily, I have got the spare one, so I was going to get sprayed anyway. But now I've just got to get that stub out of it. And then I'm going to have to re-drill and tap that. So, but yeah, that's essentially one wing off an hour later. Right, so that is the Sedan now pretty much stripped down, as you can see there in the background. So, just got to get it pushed over to my mates to get the paintwork bits done. And then I guess we'll be turning our attention back to the engine whilst that's getting sprayed. And I've just realised with the wings off, you can truly see how aggressively wide these wheels are for a 306. So, like I said, 8.5J, you can see I run stretch on them. Got 195 across on 16s. But there is exactly what I was talking about, how close the rim gets to the strut. So, the dimmers actually come even closer because the offset is slightly better on the dimmers. I say better, it sits the wheel further back in, so nothing protrudes the arches at all. But yeah, that shows off just how aggressive these wheels actually are. It's been an extremely long day. Both wings are now cut off, all the bumpers are off, everything. She's literally stripped and ready to go for paint now. So yeah, quite excited to even just see a little bit of sunshine. Yeah, I'll be pushing that up in a minute to its new home for the next month. And then in the meantime, I'll be cracking on getting this engine sorted. So I'm probably going to call that there for this episode, to be honest. Like I say, it's been a long weekend, long couple of days. It's now Sunday, so I'll wrap this up, and by the time this video comes out, hopefully that will be back in the hole. So yeah, cheers for sticking with. Obviously we ended up on a little bit of a detour. Engine down there, well, I don't think we're ever going to do that in this video, to be honest. So obviously the paintwork has become a little bit of a sidetrack, but it's all the bigger picture for me to make this car the best of what it can be while I own it. So there are still a few little bits and pieces to do over the time of owning it, which is like, I've got some rust to deal with underneath, but I mean, the paintwork, what I'm doing is literally putting lipstick on a pig to make it last a little bit longer. I know that this car, later on down the line, needs a full resto, but because I can't afford it all in one hit, it's literally just pick off the little projects, what I can afford. And again, for any of you at home watching, that is exactly what this is about. You don't just build a show car overnight. It doesn't happen. Well, you don't build any car overnight, plain and simple. If you've got the funds to do that, well, you've just took the fun out of trying to earn and build something special. Anyone can go out and buy a car overnight. What's the point? Enjoy the journey. But anyway, thanks for listening to my rambling. I'll catch you later, guys, and give us a like and subscribe if you won't mind.